The story revolves around a young man who is devastated by the death of his girlfriend. When she mysteriously returns from the dead, he is initially scared and skeptical, but later becomes happy. He seizes the opportunity to do and say all the things he failed to do with her before. However, his happiness soon turns to horror as she gradually becomes a shadow of her former self. Hey guys, welcome back to I Am Movies. Today we'll be looking at the 2014 American horror comedy movie titled Life After Beth. But before we jump into the details, make sure to show us some love by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Now let's get right into it. Hiking is Beth Slocum's favorite activity, and even though no one accompanies her, she doesn't mind going alone. One day, she sets out on a hike by herself and gets bitten by a poisonous snake, leading to her death. The movie then shifts to the day of her funeral. Her distraught boyfriend Zach Orfman is seen lost in the moment. Shortly after, Zach and his parents arrive at the Slocum residence for the funeral, where they are greeted by Beth's devastated parents, Maury and Jeannie. Zach sits solemnly by himself, and he's approached and consoled by Mr. Levin. After the funeral, Zach returns home with his parents. His brother Kyle, who works with the police department, asks him how the funeral went, which Zach finds ridiculous given the circumstances. Since Beth's passing, Zach's mental health has declined, leaving him disoriented. As a coping strategy, he starts visiting the Slocum's residence more often than normal. One night, as he arrives at their house, he notices their housekeeper Pearline running away. Upon entering the house, Zach notices Jeannie boxing up Beth's belongings. Zach asks why Pearline rushing off like that, but neither Maury nor Jeannie can explain why she ran off. As they look through Beth's pictures, they reminisce about the times they always ate Jell-O when she was little. Later, Zach engages in a game of chess with Maury, and they share a joint which Zach reluctantly accepts. During their time together, they discuss Beth, and Zach opens up about the challenges he and Beth were facing in their relationship before she passed away. He regrets not creating more memories with her and expressing his feelings. Maury empathizes, admitting that he too didn't have the best final moments with Beth. He advises Zach to cherish the good times and let go of regrets or missed opportunities. Beth's parents love Zach, evident in the warmth with which they bid him goodnight. Before leaving, Jeannie gifts Zach Beth's scarf as a token of their connection. The following day, Zach arrives at the Slocum's residence bearing Jell-O, but receives no response when he knocks, so he leaves the gift outside, assuming they aren't home. Back home, Zach tries reaching them by phone to no avail, leaving him increasingly worried. At breakfast the next morning, Zach's loss of appetite worries his parents, who suggest he see a neurologist, but Zach declines, claiming he's fine. Later, Zach returns to the Slocum's residence. Hearing hushed voices and music from inside, he grows curious. Peering through the windows, he catches a glimpse of Beth, sending him into a panic. Frantically, he calls out to her, pounding on the windows. He then returns to the front door, pleading to be let inside. Kyle, who is patrolling, arrives at the house and requests that Zach leave, asserting that he is disturbing the peace of the neighborhood. Zach reveals that Beth is inside, but Kyle assumes he is losing his mind and escorts him out of the property. Undeterred, Zach returns to the Slocums later that night, forcing his way in. Despite Maury's pleas for him to leave, Zach remains convinced he saw Beth and insists on seeing her. Jack tries to search the house himself, and Maury attempts to stop him, but he pushes him away. He rushes to the room and discovers Jeannie trying to hide Beth in the closet. Zach is stunned and confused, believing they faked Beth's death. An argument erupts, and Zach assumes Beth faked her death just to keep him away from her. He attempts to ask Beth about why she made him believe she's dead, but Maury cuts him off, not wanting Beth to know she died. So the parents act as if nothing has happened. Beth is oblivious to what's going on and struggles to remember what happened even before she died. Zach expresses his disappointment in Maury and storms out of the house. When he returns home, he informs his parents that Beth's death was a big sham. The next day, Zach visits Beth's grave, only to find a gaping pit in it. He returns to Beth's house and confronts Maury, demanding an explanation. Finally, Maury confesses that she did die but somehow returned from the dead. He has no explanation for how or why it happened, but he doesn't care because he has his daughter back, and that's all he cares about. Zach still doubts the possibility and suspects that she may have returned as a zombie. Just then, Jeannie interrupts and rebukes him, asserting that it's a miracle, and that she's been resurrected like in the Old Testament, and Maury agrees with her. Beth soon joins them and kisses Zach as if everything is normal. Beth suggests they go up to the attic, which terrifies him as it is unlike her. Beth drags him along, but he's reluctant to go with her. Maury urges him to seize the opportunity to tell her everything he wants to say to her, while Jeannie takes a picture of them before they go up. Up in the attic, Zach still looks terrified, prompting Beth to question why he and her parents are acting strange. Zach asks her what happened the previous week, but Beth doesn't remember anything. She believes that she has a test the next day and is worried about it. Zach upsets her when he asks if she remembers breaking up with him, so he calms her down by reassuring her of his love for her. They reaffirm their love for each other and end up kissing. When the moment gets intense, they decide to leave the house so they can make love away from her house. Beth claims he's going on a hike with Zach, but her parents object to the idea of them going on a hike in broad daylight for obvious reasons. Instead, they suggest they all watch TV during the day and go out later at night. However, when night comes, Beth's parents still don't want to let them out of their sight, so Zach and Beth end up swimming. At the pool, Zach notices Beth looking worried, and she shares that she's concerned about the test she has the next day. As he sits beside her, he notices a wound in her inner thigh and catches a weird facial expression, just like a zombie. Zach asks her if she wants to eat him, but Beth misunderstands the type of eating Zach is referring to. Back home, Zach gets all lovey-dovey with Beth on the phone before he goes to sleep. Zach awakens the next morning lively and enthusiastic. Then he goes to Kyle's room and apologizes to him. But Kyle walks him out of his room and Zach excitedly leaves and goes to the kitchen. His parents are happy to see that he's regained his appetite and is back to his normal self. On his way to Beth's house that morning, Zach has a weird encounter with their old mailman, whom he hasn't seen in a long time. The mailman hands him some mail that doesn't belong to them and drives off. Upon reaching Slocum's residence, Zach sees Beth adding mud to a flower in a strange and fixated manner. Zach suggests telling Beth that she died, but Maury strongly opposes the idea as it may confuse and upset her. Zach also suggests reaching out to Pearline and finding out why she ran away. Maybe she perceived something bad is coming. However, Maury isn't buying any of his ideas, and he makes Zach promise not to tell her no matter what. Soon after, Beth comes to meet Zach and opts to go on a hike with Zach. Maury is reluctant, but he succumbs when Beth starts asking questions. While driving out, Maury warns Zach to be careful. They drive to a playground and make love on the sand in broad daylight. While enjoying the moment under the sun, Beth's face gets badly burned. Upon returning home, Maury notices the burn and blames Zach, leading to a heated argument. Zach considers telling Beth the truth, but Maury tells him he's not allowed to see Beth anymore and asks him to leave. Later that night, Zach returns, sneaks Beth out, and takes her to the beach. He surprises her with a song he wrote, revealing her true status. However, the song triggers her, causing her to become extremely angry and violent. She screams and tears down the lifeguard stand, which catches fire. Zach attempts to calm her down, but she's out of control as her temper fluctuates between violent, calm, and confused. Zach guides her to the car, and she breaks his window too. A few seconds later, she asks Zach what happened to his window, as if she doesn't remember breaking it. As they drive off, the jazz music playing on the radio calms Beth down, leaving Zach in utter dismay. Upon reaching home, Beth kisses Zach in the car, but the stench of her breath repulses him. He suggests they go inside, so they climb the wall into the attic. Inside, Beth puts on smooth jazz on her boombox and begins to undress, while Zach notices that the attic walls are covered with mud. Beth tries to undress him too, but Zach resists. She pushes him to the floor and forces herself on him. Zach manages to throw her off and sprints off. Later that day, Zach sits at a restaurant reflecting on his recent experiences. Smooth jazz plays, which stresses him out. He politely requests that the music be changed. Just then, Erica, the daughter of Zach's mom's friend, shows up and mentions Zach's name. Though he takes a moment to remember her, Zach gladly invites her to join him. She sympathizes with him over his loss, and Zach unintentionally shares that when Beth died, he had wished she'd come back. But now he wishes she'd stay dead, much to Erica's shock. Seeing one of the cooks in the diner behave violently as Beth did earlier, Zach asked Erica if she's noticed people she used to know suddenly reappearing, but she doesn't understand what he's referring to, so Zach changes the topic. After their lunch, Zach gets the check and leaves. While driving off, he mistakenly runs over Beth, who is running towards him. When Zach gets out of the car, he sees that she's trapped under the wheel. He moves the car and Beth gets up like nothing happened. The people who witnessed the scene ask her if she's okay, but she screams at them, causing them to scamper in fear. Zach gets into an argument with Beth over her recent violent outbursts, but is interrupted when Erica comes out of the diner and calls out his name, making Beth angry and jealous. She questions who Erica is, and Zach introduces them. When Erica hears her name, she asks if it's another Beth, which further infuriates her. Zach explains that Erica is his childhood friend, but Beth doesn't believe them. She suspects they're together, and she attacks Erica. Zach manages to free Erica from Beth's grasp. Beth demands to know what's going on. So Zach finally takes her to her grave, telling her that she died a week ago and somehow returned to the living, probably as a zombie. She doesn't believe him and argues that her parents would have told her, but Zach explains they didn't want to hurt her feelings. Beth is confused and upset, wondering how she can be both dead and alive. Zach reveals how she died, and Beth remains calm. She then asks Zach if there's another Beth, but he assures her that there's no other Beth. He tells her they need to take a break because of her violent and angry nature, which scares and stresses him. This infuriates Beth, and she pushes him to the ground and makes away with his car. Zach returns home later that night and hears gunshots from inside. Kyle answers the door and nervously points a gun at him, thinking he's also returned from the dead like their grandfather, who is seated in their living room. Zach tells him to stop pointing a gun at him. As he never died in the first place, Kyle is still freaked out, pointing his gun around while his parents, equally confused and scared, try to calm him down. Everything suddenly makes sense to Zach. The dead are truly returning to the living. Zach's grandpa then expresses a desire to go to the attic, sparking curiosity among the others. Zach informs them that they love attics. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, and when they answer the door, the dead previous owners of the house enter, adding to their fear and confusion. Amidst the commotion, Zach receives a call from Maury, who's upset with him for breaking his promise and requests to see him. He urges them to pack while he meets with Maury outside. Just then, the power goes out. Zach joins Maury in the car, where Maury blames him for the chaos and urges him to set things right by taking back whatever he said to Beth. Zach insists they seek help from Pearline, as she may have a solution due to her Haitian background, but Maury dismisses the idea. Despite Zach's persistence, Maury refuses to provide Pearline's address. Upon returning home, they find Beth behaving like a zombie and talking to someone on the phone. Soon after, she walks through a sliding glass door and attacks and eats someone, leaving her parents and Zach terrified. Despite Beth's alarming behavior, Maury pressures Zach to express his love to her, hoping it will calm her down. Zach, however, insists on obtaining Pearline's address. When Jeannie overhears their conversation, she provides him with the address without hesitation. Much to Maury's disappointment, Zach quickly runs out and gets in his car. As he tries to start the car, Beth joins him, and he instructs her to get back in the house, but she doesn't oblige. Knowing he can't convince her, he speeds off with her before Maury catches up. During the drive, they argue about the person Beth ate, and she rudely remarks that she is a zombie. Arriving at Pearline's place, Zach leaves Beth in the car and approaches the house. Unfortunately, Pearline is no longer there, as confirmed by her cousin. Zach explains his suspicion that Pearline knows something about the zombie outbreak, but her cousin takes offense. Zach explains that Pearline fled just before Beth's return, possibly foreseeing evil. However, the cousin reveals Pearline ran away from the Slocums due to sexual harassment from Maury, leading Zach's search for answers to a dead end. Returning to the car, Zach finds Maury taking Beth away, and he attempts to intervene, but Maury knocks him out with his shotgun and takes Beth back home. At dawn, Zach awakens to find a zombie looming over him. Cautiously, he retreats to his car and drives home, where he encounters a heap of charred bodies, presumably his parents and brother. Zach hastily packs a bag and departs, stopping by a looted store to gather supplies. Arriving at Beth's house, now in ruins, Zach finds Jeannie in the kitchen tending to Beth, who is chained to the stove. Zach tends to Jeannie's wounds and inquires about Maury, only to discover that Beth has killed him. Zach asks Jeannie to take a break while he attends to Beth. Zach asks Beth how she's doing, but she begins to act violently. Zach suggests they go for a hike, which Beth readily accepts. She wonders if he isn't afraid of her, but Zach tells her that she's all he's got. Beth follows Zach, and when he steps outside, he is shocked to find Kyle there. Kyle tries to shoot Beth, but Zach stops him and questions Kyle about the burned bodies he saw at their house. Kyle reveals that their parents are alive and safe at Mr. Levin's place. Kyle apologizes for not believing Zach's warnings about Beth, and reveals that he's part of the resistance against the zombies. Beth, who's been stuck at the door, finally breaks free. Kyle tries to shoot her again, but Zach intervenes, convincing Kyle to let him take her on a hike to clear his conscience. Kyle gives Zach his gun, urging him to shoot her in the head and meet them later at Mr. Levin's place. Zach expresses that he loves Beth and can't do it, however, Kyle persuades him, reminding him that it's the right thing to do to prevent her from harming innocent people. After Kyle leaves, Zach and Beth continue their hike. Upon reaching the mountaintop, they pause to admire the beautiful view. Zach expresses gratitude to Beth for her return, acknowledging it as a second chance to make things right and bid farewell. They affirm their love for each other, and Zach finds the courage to shoot her in the head, causing her to tumble down the mountain. Zach goes to Mr. Levin's residence and reunites with his family. He also discovers that Erica is alive but somewhat traumatized. Zach informs everyone that they need to get to safety, but Mr. Levin assures him that they're safe where they are. Just then, the lights come back on and they see a broadcast on the TV stating that things are returning to normal. The next day, Zach visits Beth and Maury's graves to pay his last respects. Afterward, he joins his mom and Erica in the car. With a new hope of love, Zach asks Erica to go on a lunch date with him, and Erica smiles and agrees as they drive out of the graveyard feeling relieved. And this is where our story ends. If you'd like to see us recap any other movies or topics you have in mind, just drop a comment and let us know. And don't forget to hit the like button, share this recap, and subscribe to stay updated for the next one. Until next time.